Great. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Kaylin Hessel. I am the Advocacy and Outreach Manager for the Oregon-Able Savings Plan, and this is the second session of our new Invaluable series. Today we're going to talk about how we can successfully achieve our financial goals, because that can definitely be a challenge. So we have Kate Benedict from Financial Beginnings Oregon joining us today. Kate, thank you so much for being here. Can you tell us a little bit about Financial Beginnings?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Kaylin. I am so excited to be here. Like Kaylin said, my name is Kate Benedict, and I am the Executive Director of Financial Beginnings Oregon. And we are a nonprofit that gets to spend all of our time teaching financial literacy and financial education across the state of Oregon. And so I am extra excited to be here with all of you tonight talking about how to set financial goals and how to successfully achieve them.
Great. So we're going to try and make this as interactive as we can, given the fact that we can't see anyone. So if you have questions or comments, please put them in the chat box, and we will be asking you questions. So it'd be really great if you could go ahead and find that chat box and figure out how to, type in there. Okay, Kate, take it away.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, so when I think about financial goal setting, one of the first things I think is, what is the point of goals? Why do we want to have goals, and why should we set them? And when I think about goals, I think it's important to think about your dreams and your hopes for your future. So the point of setting goals is to help you create a plan for how to achieve or accomplish your dreams and your hopes. And goals are really important because they help increase the chances that whatever your hopes and dreams are, that you'll be able to successfully achieve them. Without goals, you may have hopes and dreams for your future or financial hopes and dreams, but it can be really hard to figure out what are the right steps to take to accomplish those things. So the goals help you create a plan. And tonight we'll be talking about how to set goals to make a plan for your dreams. And then we'll get to practice making some goals together. And we call them SMART goals. So we'll talk about that in a little while. But to start us off tonight, we wanted to start with a fun question. So Kaylin, the next slide. The question is, what would you do if you won the lottery? Anything in the world, big or small, what would you do if you were lucky enough to win the lottery? You can think about it. I sometimes like to write down my thoughts, and then you can, if you type them in the chat, that would be awesome. We can see what some of your things are that you would do if you won the lottery.
Yeah. Let's see. If I won the lottery, I would definitely travel the world. Once we can do that, I'll probably still buy a bunch of face masks though, just to be safe. I would buy a house. I'd probably want like a fancy home movie theater. I think that would be really nice.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, movies are great.
Idea. I love that idea. I think I would buy presents for all of my family and friends.
That's good.
I would definitely travel too. I think I would buy a bunch of fancy ingredients to make fun dinners. I would do that.
I would buy like $100 bottle of olive oil or something that is normally out of reach.
Yes. I would save some of it. I would also invest some of it. I guess it depends how big this lottery is, what exactly I would do with it.
Yeah, good point. But saving and investing is going to be really helpful too. Yeah, I would definitely do that as well.
Exactly. So if you've had some time to think about it, did anybody write anything in the chat, Kaylin?
I'm not seeing anything.
Okay, well, we talked about some really good things, didn't we? Right? We said that if we won the lottery, we would travel, we would cook fancy recipes, buy a bunch of face masks, maybe buy a house. Well, so answer me this, Kaylin. Is there any reason why You can't do that without winning the lottery? Do you think there's a way to accomplish those dreams and big hopes without winning the lottery?
I mean, yeah, maybe like a smaller version, like maybe not travel the whole world immediately, but I could totally figure out how to go on a trip.
Exactly. So when we think about those things that we say we would do if we won the lottery, they're hopes, they're dreams, right? They're big and they're exciting and they feel like maybe they're out of reach. But for a lot of those things, through smart goal setting and saving money, we can actually start making progress towards those hopes and dreams. And so that is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how we can make big lottery hopes and dreams happen through smart goal setting. All right, next slide. Okay, so first off, before we get talking about SMART goals, I wanted to share about the different types of goals. You know, we said that goal setting is a really important part of financial planning. When you set goals and you make a plan to succeed, you're that much more likely to achieve your dreams. And we like to think of goals, there's 3 different types: long-term, intermediate term, and short-term goals. So let's start at short-term and work our way back. So a short-term goal is something that you're interested in doing in less than 1 year. For example, maybe you want to take a vacation this summer, or next fall you want to buy a new smartphone, or your sister's birthday is coming up in July and you want to be able to buy her a present. Those are examples of short-term goals. Kaylin, can you think of any other short-term goals?
Oh, man. Yeah, vacation's my main one.
Yeah.
But yeah, no.
There you go. Vacation. That's a perfect short-term goal. Yeah. And it's something that, you know, you normally think of it as something that you would want to accomplish within less than 1 year. And then an intermediate term goal, for example, buying a car, renting an apartment, getting married. Those are goals that we think about that are within 1 year to 5 years. So they're not a short-term goal. They might take a bit more planning. They might take a bit more saving, and it might take a little bit longer to get there, but it's an intermediate term goal because you're thinking of it as sort of that middle range. Intermediate is just another way to say middle. So it's sort of a middle range goal from 1 year out until 5 years out. Kaylin, you mentioned buying a house. Well, that is a great example of a long-term goal. So a long-term goal is something that you might have a goal or a hope or a dream that you know might take a little bit longer than 5 years. So we think of long-term goals as something that you're planning for and saving for 5 or more years. And I put some examples up here too. You can see saving for higher education. Maybe you want to go to college or trade school and you want to save up for tuition and books. That can be a longer term goal because it can be more expensive. Buying a house is also on this long-term goal list because that is something that can be really expensive. So it probably takes more than 5 years to save up all the money you would need for a down payment, unless you got lucky and won the lottery. And retiring, that's another example. And these are all just examples. We'll talk about how goals are really personal and everybody might have different goals that fall under short, intermediate, and long-term goals. But these are just good examples of something that might take longer than 5 years. Retiring for most of us is further off than 5 years.
I love my job, but I also cannot wait for retirement. Just sounds glorious.
That's a good point, Caitlin. You're right. Same. It's a good long-term goal.
I'm definitely saving for that one.
Yep. Me too. Well, and so During the lottery conversation, Kaylin, we were talking about different goals of ours. I'm curious, I mentioned, for example, oh, I wanted to buy a bunch of fancy ingredients and make a fancy dinner. Do you think that's a short-term, intermediate, or long-term goal?
I think it could be a short-term goal if we're talking about one dinner. If we're talking about a year's worth of food, that would be probably more intermediate. I'm guessing one
Yes.
dinner at a time.
Yep, there you go. Well, and that was a perfect way to look at it, that it kind of depends how you structure your goal. If you think about it in terms of short-term goals, intermediate, or long-term. So these goals are great, right? This is an awesome way to think about the different time frames for our goals. But the best way to accomplish a goal is to make a plan for it. And so tonight I'm going to share a really great way, and our favorite way at Financial Beginnings, to create a plan for your goals. And we do that by making your goals SMART. So we will talk about what SMART goals mean in a minute. But a good example, if you want to save up, here on this list, we see new smartphone under short-term goal. If you want to save up to buy a new smartphone in 1 year, for example, because it's a short-term goal, and you know how much it costs, you'll need to make a plan for how much you'll need to save each month or each week to make sure that by the time you reach that short-term goal period, that time frame when you're ready to accomplish your goal, that you have enough money to do what you wanted to do. So there's a process for that we're going to walk through to get you there, to figure out how do you make that plan. So we're going to talk through the SMART goal process now. All right, thank you, Kaylin. Okay, so SMART goals. SMART is an acronym. So the word SMART means, we all know what it means. It means smart, intelligent. It also, the letters S-M-A-R-T spell out, they spell out the word SMART, but they also just stand for the different parts of a SMART goal. So we're going to talk through what all those different parts are. SMART goals have 5 really important things in common. They have 5 important characteristics. They are specific, so I'm going to start with the S. They are specific. That means that you're really specific and clear about what you want to achieve or who will benefit from the goal and why it's important. The S is really just about being really clear about what your goal is. So, you might think about, why is this goal important? Remember that we talked about your hopes and dreams. So that's something that when you think about a specific goal, you're thinking about, well, why does it matter? And what are all the details of my goal? Then we get to the M. M stands for measurable. So that is a really important part. Remember in that example I gave about a smartphone. If we want to save for a smartphone, but we aren't sure how much it costs and we can't measure how much money we'll need, it will be really hard to know when we have accomplished that goal. So the measurable part of the SMART goals means that the goal explains how much or how many or how you'll know when it's done, whatever your goal is. So at the end of this conversation, we'll workshop a goal together and all these pieces will make sense. But measurable basically means the money part, the how much part, what you can measure. A stands for achievable, but it can also stand for attainable. So different people use SMART goals in different ways. And so sometimes you'll see achievable, sometimes you'll see attainable, but they really mean the same thing. They mean, is this goal something I can actually reach? Is it something I can achieve? So you want to make sure that typically that the goal is something that you do feel like you can achieve so that it keeps you motivated. Kaylin, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, that part is always a struggle for me. I have a habit of setting really big goals that are impossible for like anyone to achieve for themselves. So I always have to remember being like, okay, no, what is actually something that can be accomplished? You might not end world hunger tomorrow, but you can do something to help someone, to make it so I can actually attain that.
Yeah. And, it's a really interesting thing when we set goals that aren't actually achievable, like you said, ending world hunger tomorrow. It can be hard because it makes you feel sad or disappointed when you feel like you aren't reaching the goals that you're setting for yourself. So one way, when I am working on making my goals smart, so when I'm thinking about the achievable part, I think about a goal that I had recently that maybe felt too hard and it wasn't achievable. And I just try to make one or two parts of it a little bit easier to achieve. That way, I feel motivated by my success and I feel more likely to stick to the goal. So, for example, you could make, if you're trying to save for something like a smartphone, you could, to make it easier, you could either save a little bit less each week, or you could extend the time frame longer. So rather than saving for 10 weeks, you could save for 20 weeks and just push out, how long that goal, how long you have to accomplish that goal. So, if your goal is measurable, if you've made your SMART goal and it's measurable and you know how much, then a good way to make it feel achievable is to make sure that you either slow the time frame down or make the goal amount a little bit smaller. That way, you can feel encouraged by reaching your goals.
That makes sense to me.
That's a great point, Kaylin. Okay, so next up is the R, and R stands for relevant. So relevant is such a personal thing. A goal might be relevant for somebody and might not be relevant for somebody else. For example, my sister and I were best friends, but we have really different goals. So when we're setting SMART goals, a goal that's relevant for my sister is not relevant for me, and that is okay. We like to think about relevant meaning, is this something that I really want? And in my life, is now the time to do this? Is this the right time to set this goal? Because if you're setting a goal at the right time, you're much more likely to stick to it. So far we have our S, our M, our A, and our R. We have SMAR, and now we're to the T, time-based. So this is really important because this helps you keep on track. Time-based means by what date must this goal be reached? So if you're thinking about, for example, buying a new smartphone and you want to accomplish it by next fall, well, how long is that? That is, say, 9 months away or 10 months away. That means that when you're thinking about how to spell out your goal, you're putting an end date on it. You're putting a time on it for when you want to have accomplished it. Whew. All right, we did it. We explained what SMART goals are. We explained what the letters mean. And the first, the first step of goal setting is to really figure out what's important to you. So you can do that by thinking about what life events or hopes and dreams you have and when you want to experience them and by when. So those are some of the key pieces. Okay, so we're going to get to the next, let's see, we're on the next slide, Kaylin.
There you go.
Perfect. So this is another example of a way to highlight SMART goals. This is great because it shows you that you can have the A mean achievable, you can have the A mean attainable. That's okay. However it works for you, you can use either one. And so I think, Kaylin, we can talk through some of your other questions, or we can get to making a SMART goal together. What do you want to do first?
Yeah, so audience, if you have any goals that you are thinking about pursuing, we would love to help you turn those into SMART goals. So if you could give us some ideas, some examples in the chat, that would be great. And until that happens, I will ask some other questions that I had. So, what tends to get in the way of people achieving their goals? And how can we, get past that?
Yeah, that's a great question because it can be so frustrating if you feel like things are getting in the way. Well, something that that we think about is if you have a goal, but you haven't put it into the SMART format, it can feel like you're focusing on the what part of the goal. You're focusing on, I want to travel, but you're not really able to focus on the how part. You're not able to focus on the how you're going to do it. And what SMART does is it helps you see the different pieces of the goal to help you make a plan for how you'll do it. It breaks it up into small, measurable chunks because you're being more specific, so you know exactly what. You're being measurable, so you know exactly how much, and it gives you those small chunks to be able to achieve it. So, for example, say you want to save $50 for a nice present for somebody that you love. You might want to focus on how much money you'd like to save each week and how you will save that money rather than, just focusing on the present that you want to buy them. Because, if you just focus on the end, the what of the goal, it can be really hard to have a plan and stick to it. So the smart way helps you break it up into chunks and focus on the how part.
Yeah, that's a really great point, just how important that how is, the process of getting to your goal. Lots of people have dreams to travel the world like me, but many people don't ever get to do it or don't get to go on any trip because they didn't come up with that plan. They didn't think about how they could actually make it fit into their lives. So this would definitely make it easier to attain it. Oh, I think we might have a question or comment. All right. So someone in our audience is saving for a used car and all the monthly costs that go along with that.
Awesome. That's great. Well, we can absolutely make that goal SMART, and that would be great to do. We will need a little bit of participation from that person to tell us if they know how much that used car is. Or we can just make an example if we want. What do you think, Kaylin?
So, I mean, if you know a specific car that you're looking for and how much it costs, put that in. Otherwise, yeah, I'm trying to think about how much my last car cost. It was around like maybe $10,000-$12,000.
Yeah.
Work with that.
Yeah, let's see.
Oh, she's thinking $8,000.
$8,000.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so this will be fun. This will be great to make this goal SMART. Okay, so what's step one, right? If we're, oh, and Kaylin, you can go to the next slide. The SMART goals worksheet slide. So the initial goal that we just talked about was saving for a used car and all the associated costs with it. So that is great. That is an awesome goal. And that is, already it has some good detail there because you're calling out what some of the costs will be. And then we already moved to step one. We already moved to the specific part. When we're thinking about the SMART goals, remember specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. So specific, we know we want to save up $8,000 for the used car. So in that section, we would describe what you hope to achieve. So the detail there would be, I would like to save $8,000 for a used car. Perfect. And guess what? We kind of even got ahead of ourselves because measurable is the part where we talk about how much or how many. So we can go a step further though. We can say, okay, I would like to save $8,000 for a used car. And we can say, how long, how long, well, actually, we're going to get there with time-based.
Yeah.
We'll get there with time-based.
Yeah.
But
we could think about, our budget and the money that we have available right now. And, do you have any idea of how much money you might be able to save a month? We could start there.
That's a great point, Kaylin. That's a good way to do it. Once you're specific and then you want to get measurable, you can think about how much you think you can do per month or per week.
Whichever way is best for you. Right. So let's say I can save about $100 a month. Let's try that.
Okay, great. $100 a month. That sounds perfect. So then oops, I lost you for a second. Okay, there we go. Measurable. I will save $100 a month. And that is a great way to, that is a piece too. And we talked about adjusting your goals if needed. That measurable part is where we get to adjust. So if you start out saving and $100 a month is really difficult, you can decide to do $80 a month. Or if it's too easy, you can do $120 a month and speed up your goal. But that's a great place to start. So $8,000 for a used car, measurable. I will save $100 a month. Okay, how about next slide? We'll get to attainable. So this is where you think about, we're thinking about how we'll be able to achieve it, right? So what are the resources that you'll be using to save that $100 a month? Maybe it's money from a job that you're working and you're putting it into your Able account. Kaylin, do you think that sounds like a reasonable way to save for this goal?
Yeah, I think that would definitely be reasonable. Also, if birthdays or holidays come up and family and friends give you money, they can directly put that into your Able account, which could help you get there as well. That's a little harder to plan for, but it can be helpful.
Yeah, that's great. And that is a perfect spot where you can list out multiple things. So for example, let's say the resources, financial and otherwise, to attain your goal would be, income from a part-time job, dollars from gifts, and then you can also spell out, either a savings account or an Able account, right? So that's where the money will be saved, and that's a resource too. A savings account or an Able account is a resource. You'll be using that to attain your goal.
Is this also a place where we can think about, sacrifices we might have to make so that we can get to this goal? If I have a part-time job, I've got that money, there's so many different things that I could end up spending it on.
That's a really good point, Kaylin. I often think about when I'm trying to save extra money for something, sometimes that means that I'm not spending that money on other things that normally I would be doing. So, for example, I really love takeout. I like getting takeout food, and even though, I can still eat healthy when I'm getting takeout, I know it's more expensive. So, when I think about attainable, I think about not only money that's coming in, like we talked about, part-time job or gifts, and not just where you'll save it, that resource of an Able or savings account, but also maybe some areas where I'll need to trim back. So for me, and this is just if we're making this kind of SMART goal, for me, remember that you want them to be relevant, and we'll get there, but you want them to be connected to your current or future plans. So for me though, I would say I'll limit my takeout during the month so that I have extra money to save. Great example.
I also spend too much money on takeout. It's really delicious.
Yeah.
I think if you go through and look at how you spent your money over the month, you might be surprised at where you could cut back on. With everything being able to stream online now, it was really easy to end up with a Netflix account and then Hulu and then, all of the others. So you could look at that and say, like, do I need 4 streaming services? I really only use the one. I'll cancel the rest. That'll save you up a little bit of money each month as well.
Exactly. That's a great example. Yeah. So for everyone, they might have a different thing that they're thinking about what they spend money on and thinking where they can cut back. It might be takeout, it might be streaming services, it might be who knows what it might be. It might be art supplies, and they can use old art supplies instead. All sorts of things where we spend our money.
And you talked about how you want to make fancy recipes. You could get some cheaper ingredients while you're working on accomplishing a different goal. You could buy a generic instead of like the really fancy brand name. Usually
Exactly.
tastes just as good.
Yep. That is such a perfect example. You can buy in bulk. So if you know you are using a lot of one ingredient, you can buy larger amounts and, figure out ways to save money around the edges there so that the A part of your goal attainable so that you'll be able to get there, other resources. Perfect. Okay, so now we'll get to relevant, R, relevant. So this is where you are sort of connecting yourself to the goal. You're explaining why this goal matters to you. Why is it relevant? Why is it important for your current or future plans? And maybe in this goal example of a used car, maybe this person wants to be able to get around on their own. And that is a really great, current or future plan to have that independence to be able to go where you want, when you want. And so a used car is an awesome way to do that. Can you think of other reasons, Kaylin, why a used car would feel relevant?
Yeah, maybe getting to work, or if you live in a city that doesn't have night or weekend bus service, which my city did not for a while, you could only go places during the day, Monday through Friday. That's no good. You want to do things on a Saturday as well. So this could just, free up the ability to go places where you just couldn't go before.
That's exactly. That's a great example of how, for you, it might be relevant because there wasn't good public transit in your neighborhood. And for me, it might be relevant because, I'm looking for freedom or independence or, whatever it is. But this is where we get to write down, why is it relevant to me? Why is this goal relevant to me?
Yeah.
Now, time-based. So I already got ahead of ourselves a little bit earlier and talked about the time frame, but this is where we can establish a concrete due date for you to reach your goal. And, there's a spoiler alert here. We already know that this used car is going to cost $8,000. And we said that in the measurable part that we were going to save $100 a month. So what does that mean? Let's do the math. That means $8,000 divided by 100. That means it'll take us 80 months to buy this used car. So 80 months equals, there's 12 months a year, that equals 6 years. And so that, that turns it into a long-term goal. That's over 5 years, that turns it into a long-term goal when we're thinking about short, intermediate, and long-term. So if you decide that you want this to be an intermediate term goal or a short-term goal, then what you would adjust is how much you're saving each month or the overall price of the car. So that way you can adjust the math to have it fit within your time frame. But using this example of $8,000, $100 a month, then your concrete due date is 6 years from now, which is great. Like we said, goals are personal and individual for each person. So a long-term goal for somebody, this is a long-term goal. It might be an intermediate goal for somebody else, and that is okay. So this is awesome to have all of these details spelled out. So now we want to take all of those pieces and put it together. So we incorporate what we wrote in all those boxes above into a single goal statement. So Kaylin, let's do that together.
Okay. See if I'm remembering this right. Nope, I just can't type tonight.
Save $100 a month for 6 years to buy a used car that costs $8,000. And yeah, and we can add the details. Yeah, this is important to me because, yep. That's awesome. And let's see. Oh, and we also want to call out the attainable part, right? Right? So let's say I will save $100 a month from a part-time job and from gifts and from cutting back on takeout in my personal example.
Yeah. And Kate, this is something that even while we're pursuing this goal, we can change it while we're doing it, right? So like I said earlier, it's hard to really factor in how much people are going to give you for your birthday or holidays. So let's say, someone gives you, $100. That's one full month of this plan. So then you could change it. So maybe you only need to save $98 a month, or you'll get that 1 month sooner.
Exactly. I love that. It's such a good thing to remember that, say, just like you said, say you get some extra money that you weren't expecting. That's awesome. You get to move up the time frame. So you get to adjust the measurable part and you can adjust the goal. But say in the opposite example, say you have 1 month where you can't save $100 because an unexpected bill came up and you had to pay for it. And now you're feeling a little bit behind and it feels frustrating and it feels like, oh gosh, should I keep going or did I ruin the whole thing? The best thing about SMART goals is that you can always start over. Always. You can always just begin again. Start over with the next month. And maybe that means that your 6-year time frame is pushed out a little bit. Or maybe it just means that you're able to save a little bit more that next month and catch up. But either way, it just means because they're time-based, you can adjust when you'll accomplish your goal or adjust how much and keep going. And that's a really great thing, that whether your goal is on track or behind track, you can always adjust it as you go.
Yeah.
So before we get to some more questions, let's read our final product.
Oh, actually, we would like to adjust some of our SMART goal. She thinks she'll be able to save $600 a month. So
woo!
Go back and change that.
That is awesome. Okay, so we'll adjust the math. $8,000 divided by 600 a month. I'm using a calculator. Equals 13 months. Wow, that speeds it way up. So that goes from 6 years to a year and a month, which is awesome. So now it's an intermediate term goal.
Yeah, that's great. Okay.
That is now it's an intermediate term goal. So now it will say I will save $600 a month for 13 months. There we go. For 13 months to buy a used car that costs $8,000. This is important to me because I want more freedom. I will save money from, and of course we made these up. So, in your specific instance, this part would be really personal to you. It would include your details. But for us, we said I will save money from my part-time job, from gifts, and from spending less on takeout. We've done it. We have a SMART goal. And the best thing about SMART goals is that you can see it. You can see what you wrote out and why it's relevant to you and some of the details that are especially, relevant for you. And so one of the things I love talking about is what can I do to make sure that I stick to this goal? I've written this goal out. It's SMART. It's specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's relevant, and it's time-based. I know what it is and I know why I want it. Well, goals can still feel hard. And so how can I hold myself accountable? I have some tricks that I love, and I'm going to share some of those. But remember, too, that these things work differently for everybody. So you might have different ways to hold yourself accountable. I like to write my goals down, which we did, which is a great first step. I like to not only write them down, but put them in a spot where I will see them every day. I stick them right on the fridge. I also, this is probably not unique, but I like it. I print out a calendar, a monthly calendar. So right now I have my February calendar up on the fridge. And my February calendar, I'm able to put in each box what the goals are that I'm working towards those days. And then once I do the goal for that day, so for example, $600 a month, you're going to need to save a little bit of money each day. So each day, when you calculate out what that is in a month, each day you'll be able to go in and mark off that you saved that much a day. And on a calendar, I find that the visual part really helpful for me to see, oh wow, I am on track. That is awesome. You can probably do something like that in an app, in a smartphone app, or something on your computer. But I just like a good old-fashioned paper calendar, and I really get satisfaction out of using a pen and marking it off. I really love that.
Yeah. One of the things that I think is pretty cool about the Able account is that you set a goal for how much you want to save each year. And it's a goal, it's for you to help, make those dreams into plans. There's nothing bad that's going to happen if, your goal changes during the year. But you can say how much you want to save. And then we have this little tracker that grows each time you make a deposit. So you can see yourself getting closer and closer to the finish line. So it's that visual to make it more real as well.
That is awesome. That's exactly right. That visual part helps so much. Being able to see, oh, I'm making progress. I'm getting closer. I'm getting closer. It's really motivating to be able to see it that way. That's great. So a couple other things I like to do. I like to tell my family and friends what my goal is so that they can help me get there. They can encourage me and support me on, as I'm making progress. Saying it out loud makes you feel like, oh boy, I said it out loud. I got to stick to it. And so I find that that really helps too. And then another way is making little benchmarks that so you can sort of celebrate along the way. So for example, this person's goal, they want to save 600 a month. So maybe every single month for those 13 months, at the end of the month, if they've saved that $600, they get to do something to celebrate, something to make it feel like, woo, 1 month down, I did it. And reaching those milestones and celebrating those little moments can really help you feel motivated and help you keep going.
I like that a lot.
Another question we get is, can the SMART method be used for non-money goals? Yes, absolutely. It can be used for anything. I really like to use SMART goals for spending more time reading new books. It's really important for me to keep learning. And so I set SMART goals about how many books I want to read and how much time I want to spend doing it and why that matters to me. And so, a cool way to stay motivated with your SMART goals for your money can be to set a SMART goal for fun things too, like how you'll celebrate when you reach your goals. You could have another SMART goal that says how you'll celebrate each time you reach your savings goal for your used car. You'll be just filled with goals and you'll feel so great.
That's awesome. Yeah, you want to make sure those celebrations do happen. So it's good to have that plan.
Yep.
Yeah.
Another thing too, I just mentioned, you can have a SMART goal for your money goal. You can have a SMART goal for celebrating your goals. So sometimes people ask me, well, is it possible to have too many goals at once? It is, but there's a way around it. So if you have a lot of goals, say you have 10 goals all at once, it can be hard to keep track of them all because there's just so much to track. So that can be distracting. But a really great way that I like to do it is separating your goals into different areas of your life. So for example, your school-based goals, your family goals, your financial goals. And when you have them spread out into different categories, it can feel easier to track them.
Mhm. What if I end up feeling overwhelmed by, let's say it's just one goal, but it can be really hard some months to, put aside that money or to make progress on reading those books. And then you think you're behind and it gets, I get stressed out a little bit by that.
Yeah.
So what can I do when I'm in a situation like that?
Yeah, when you feel overwhelmed and you feel like just sort of giving up entirely. Well, one of the things that I find that works really well is when I'm feeling that way, I ask myself, Kate, what would you say to a friend who needed some encouragement to accomplish a goal that they had set? And I know that if a friend of mine said, hey, I'm thinking about giving up on my goal, I'm feeling overwhelmed, I would say things like, you can do it. Look how far you've come. Think about how great you'll feel when you get there. Or I would say things like, you can take a break if you need one so that then you have more energy to restart. I would think about encouraging them, right? I wouldn't say, oh yeah, may as well give up if you're overwhelmed. I would think about how to encourage my friends. So it really helps me to ask myself those same questions. I, self-talk and positive self-talk really does help if you remember that it can be hard to stick to your goals all the time and it can feel overwhelming. But asking yourself those same questions and encouraging yourself to take a break, etc., really does help. I also sometimes like to think about how much time I've already put into my goal. So say I'm a couple months in and I fall behind and I feel like giving up, I'm overwhelmed. Think about all the months I've already saved. I've already done a lot of the work. So you can slow down. But if you just give yourself a deep breath and feel positive about the time you've already put in, it'll feel easier to get a little bit closer. I spend time thinking about how good I'll feel when I reach my goal. And the best part, I think, is the R in SMART. When you make a SMART goal, you're explaining why it's relevant to you. So I remind myself, why did I set this goal in the first place? Remember that, we made it relevant to our lives. Is it still relevant? If it is, that's a good way to motivate yourself and feel less overwhelmed. And if it's not, that means that you can adjust the goal. If for example, Kaylin, you were mentioning public transit wasn't in your neighborhood. Say after 6 months, they installed a perfect bus line that gets you straight from your house to your job. Maybe a used car is no longer relevant to you. So you're feeling overwhelmed. If the goal isn't relevant anymore, that's a good time to switch it. Or if it is still relevant, that's a good way to motivate yourself.
I really like that point you made. We should be as nice to ourselves as we are to our friends. Definitely advice I need to tell myself over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And it's a work in progress. Maybe I'll make a SMART goal about that.
Yes, I will say 5 nice things about myself every day.
Well, and I'm
Great.
curious if we have any questions in the chat, or do we have, we made this goal SMART. Are there any questions that we haven't answered?
So it doesn't look like it so far, but please feel free to put those in either the Q&A or the chat, and we will get to them. We're almost at 7, just a couple minutes away. So we also can end this early. So if you're not comfortable asking your questions while the recording's happening, you can ask them when it's done. So I think, Kate, we should go ahead and stop the recording, and then we'll stick around until 7 for any more questions that people have. So for those watching the recording and those of you who are here live, thank you so much for joining us. It was really great hanging out with you and trying to help you figure out how to reach your many important goals.